Welcome, everybody. Good Saturday evening to you if you're listening on the shortwave station. And, good day to you if you're listening anywhere else. I am Rhea, and this is Rhea's Shack. So you might be wondering, what's going on here? Who am I? What am I doing here? Well, let me answer both those questions. So I am Rhea. My call sign is N2RJ. That's November 2, Romeo Juliet. I'm an amateur radio operator here in New Jersey in the eastern United States. And I am this is the first show that is going to be airing on the shortwave station, WTWW. So we call this show Rhea's Shack, okay? And I've used this name for a long time with regard to my other media and other projects. Some of you might know me from YouTube, because I do run a YouTube channel called Rhea's Shack Ham Radio. And if you go on youtube.com and you look for Rhea's Shack Ham Radio, or you look for N2RJ, my call sign, it'll come up. And, I'd appreciate it if you like and subscribe so that you could never miss a video. What is this about? Well, first things first, we're going to be talking ham radio, okay? But we're actually going to be doing it a little more, my focus has always been teaching people to be not only get into the hobby, right? Because I definitely want people who are interested in ham radio to learn as much as possible about ham radio. But I also want to make the existing ham a better ham, okay? A better ham radio operator so that they can enjoy this hobby, this pastime, this service a little more and, definitely better themselves. So I do a lot of teaching content. I do a lot of Q&A. My story, I was licensed originally in Trinidad and Tobago in the Caribbean. And I was licensed back in the 1990s in high school, so you could probably tell how old I am, but, that's okay. This is 25 years in ham radio for me. And I've really had a wonderful time. And I've also done some very serious volunteer work with ham radio, and I've not only helped save lives, literally, but I've also helped pass it on. I've helped students learn about science and STEM and other things. And, now I've taken it to another level where I serve the ARRL, the American Radio Relay League, which is our national association here in the United States. What do I have to say about ham radio? Well, it's been very good to me. It's been a very good career motivator. It's made a lot of connections. It's been absolutely great for recreation. I've helped out in a couple of big events, most notably the attacks of September 11th, 2001. A very dark time for our country, and I helped in the recovery efforts with amateur radio. I might talk about that sometime, but it's I must admit it's very emotional. And speaking of emotional, I really appreciate what Ted Randall and Holly and the rest of the crew at WTWW are doing for Ukraine. I send out a message to the people of Ukraine. My heart goes out to them in this war they're fighting. But, I don't want to be sad. I want to give them the motivation to fight on and basically, throw Putin straight back to Moscow. Okay? That is my motivation. And I want it so that my Ukrainian amateur radio friends and I can make contacts again and be friends, Of course, we're still friends. One of my, the person who printed my QSL cards is from Ukraine, Gennady UX5UO, and he's such a sweet person, okay, and he takes such care and attention to his his business, and it's a love for him to produce QSL cards. Anyway, like I said, this radio show on WTWW is brand new, but I also do other shows on my YouTube channel, which you can find at, and it's a little funky. It's youtube.com/RJAIRAM, or you could just go on YouTube and look for Rhea's Shack Ham Radio, or look for my call sign. And please like and subscribe. I promise it's not going to cost you anything, but it will help the channel grow and bring more content to you. Speaking of Ted, Randall, and Holly and the rest of the crew at WTWW, they're doing a great service, so you can check them out at WTWW.us, and there are several ways you can support them and, help them continue the great programming on the air. And, that's going to be great. So, yeah. So, other than that, what is the show going to be about? So, I'm going to be featuring every week a topic, right? And we're going to be talking about a topic relating to amateur radio, radio communications, shortwave listening, scanning, radio-related hobbies and radio-related activities, okay? This week, we're going to be talking about Mars. We're not going to be talking about Elon Musk's plan to build a rocket to go back home, to go back to Mars, okay? We're talking about military affiliate radio service and the historical and the current mission of Mars. I have a good friend here he's in New York and I'm in New Jersey. We're neighboring states. We're part of the tri-state area. Ron Tomoe, KE2UK. He is an officer with Mars. He's very high up in the Mars organization in New York. And he gave an interview that I posted on YouTube. So I'm going to play it here for the shortwave audience so you guys can hear all about Mars. And Mars is a very interesting part of amateur radio. It's part of it's not strictly amateur radio service, but it's not amateur radio. It's kind of something that grew out of amateur radio when hams were called into service to serve during wartime. And then they basically, that remained on, and the mission changed over the years. Today, the mission is more about disaster communications and helping out in times of emergency. And it's also serving the military. They don't really do that many back in the day. So back in the day, Mars used to do a lot of phone patches, right? They used to help the troops call home. But today, they do some of that, but they don't really do that much. Their mission's a little different. But you'll hear Ron talk about it, right? And Ron and I had an interview. What else? We're also going to be talking about the news. I take news from various sources over online and in the various amateur radio places, and also people send news tips to me. I am going to definitely talk about the news, and you guys are going to be able to listen to my view on the news, because I do have a lot of commentary and inside baseball, believe it or not. And finally, I'll take your questions. You can send your questions to RIA, that's Romeo India Alpha, at n2rj.com. RIA at n2rj.com, and I will answer your questions. So I mentioned about the ARRL as well. I'll be clear, this is not an official ARRL show, although I will be, talking up the league and such like that, and I'm basically, going to be showing my support for the league, because I do believe the league is doing a lot of good work. Despite its faults, nobody's perfect. I'm not perfect. I realize that every day. The league is not perfect, but the league definitely is one of the better things we have in ham radio. And I do think that we need to support them. And of course, if you're listening in another country, please support your national society as well. There's a list of them on the IARU website. For example, in Canada, there is a Radio Amateurs of Canada, and I know them very well. They come to our ARRL meetings. There is also the Radio Society of Great Britain, and in Trinidad and Tobago, my old former home country. Oh yeah, I didn't tell you that, right? I was born and I grew up there. So I have stories from there too. That's Trinidad and Tobago Amateur Radio Society. Okay, so yeah, so it's going to be a fun time. I hope you're along for the ride. And of course, just keep those questions coming. I'm going to answer some of them. I also pick off some from social media. I also am a moderator at Ham Radio / New to the Hobby, and I will pick off some questions there and talk about them on this radio show. So, yeah, I really hope that we can be friends, and maybe we'll have some more things coming down for you later on. But first, let's take a break. All right, and we'll hear about some good things coming up. So let's talk about the news. And I'm actually going to be bringing it up here on my computer. You might hear a little clickety clack. That's really interesting. So the big news this week, of course, was that the FCC in the United States is finally collecting fees. And the FCC has imposed a fee congressionally mandated by Congress. So Congress created this legislation and passed this legislation called the Ray-Baums Act back in, I believe it was 2017 or 2018. And this originally started out saying, well, we need to have a fee to recover some of our cost, right? And then what happened was that the FCC put forth this fee of $50. Well, the ARRL went and said that's kind of like, we don't want to be charged fees because we provide some valuable emergency communications and all of that stuff. It's a very valid argument, I would say. Of course, there are people in support of the fee, believe it or not. I don't know. But I'm definitely against the fee. But you know what? It's not going to break me, right? At the same time, it's not going to break me. At the same time, I really wish that the FCC would realize, our benefit to society. That said, the ARRL got the fee knocked down to $35. So it's $35 for 10 years, which when you look at it, is really not all that bad. It's still going to be a bite for some people, but it's really not all that bad. The side effect of this, though, is that if you're looking for a GMRS license, so we have a radio service called GMRS here, which is basically it's kind of like UHF CB radio, right? Without all the skip and truckers, okay? Not the truckers are not bad people, okay? But, it's just impractical for them to be on GMRS, okay? And I listen to them sometime on CB. Sometimes they're pretty informative. Sometimes they're hilarious. But yeah, so it's basically the type of traffic you're going to hear on GMRS are mostly people who are either out in the woods in four-wheel drive vehicles like Jeeps and other four-wheel drive vehicles. Yes, there are other four-wheel drive vehicles besides Jeeps. And you're going to hear some people making local communications, people talking with their families and such like that. So GMRS is a big thing with this. You get $35 license. And the interesting thing is it covers your entire family. And the definition of family is pretty broad. It covers right down to your grandkids and your aunt, your uncle, your niece, your nephew, everything. It's pretty broad. So that's one good side effect. So I got a GMRS license actually, but I got it when it was $70, and I have it there. I'm WRNY816 on GMRS. I use it when I'm doing drone photography and such like that because I do that as well, and I use that for my kids to help me spot, and communicate and such like that. So that's a really interesting piece of news. So what's going to happen now is that the fee for amateur radio is going to be effective for new licenses, vanity call signs, and it's going to be effective for renewals, right? The good news is the ARRL VEC department has clarified that the license fee is not going to be applicable to upgrades. So you can upgrade your license and with no problems, right? And no fees. Change your address, right? So you move, no fee. Change your telephone number, no fee. Change your email address because you need to have an email address with the FCC now, no fee. Change your name, ladies, you get married, or you change your name with a court order or something. You don't pay a fee. So all that's good news. So that's something good. So there we have it. And what's going to happen is the FCC, once you put in your application for a new license, the FCC is going to email you and tell you have $10 to pay the fee. So that's pretty interesting. All right. So what else is in the news? Well, solar activity is intensifying. The sun released a X-class flare, and it had a big solar blackout on Thursday over Southeast Asia and Australia. and the sun has just been absolutely cranking. And if you want an in-depth view of the solar activity, you can check out Space Weather Woman on YouTube. She definitely, she does a whole solar forecast, kind of like, she looks like a TV meteorologist, right? And it's really nice that she presents in that format, because it brings people to understand solar science better. And I really appreciate that she does that. Dr. Tamitha Scove. She might be on Ham Nation and other places as well, but you can see her on YouTube. And I was working some pretty good DX to like Asia. I work Indonesia, that's in Oceania, I believe. And I work Thailand. Got some new contacts for my DXCC. So, other things in the news, and we're going to talk about the ARIS contact to Bellefontaine, Ohio, right? World Amateur Radio Day. So the ITU celebrated World Amateur Radio Day, and the World Amateur Radio Day basically is on April 18th every year. Incidentally, that's the date I've got my first driver's license. That's a funny coincidence. And I believe the World Amateur Radio Day was started when the IARU, the International Amateur Radio Union, was formed. So, DK Philip Springer, DK6XP, chair of the International IARU Region 1 Working Group, he said how to become a ham in the digital era. There was an article, How to Become a Radio Ham in the Digital Era, by Nick Sinanis, SV3SJ from Greece. And Springer, that's DK6SP, he earned his license when he was 9. And he explained a lot of work operating techniques and social connections. So, pretty cool stuff. All right, and the Dayton Hamvention is on, okay? So Hamvention is returning back to Greene County. Are you going to Dayton Hamvention? I know I am. A lot of people are still kind of, they're a little cautious with the virus and such like that. So, you know what? If that's your choice to stay home, that's your choice. I respect your choice. But I'm going to Hamvention. I'll be there in the ARRL booth. And I'm also going to probably hang out with Ted and Holly with WTWW, just to say hello. But it's going to be real interesting, and they're going to be at the Greene County Fairgrounds in Xenia, Ohio, okay? I know my friend Andrea, K2EZ, she has a shirt that says Xenia Hamfest Princess. It's funny. But yeah, so after a few years, it's going to be, I'm really looking forward to it. And I'm also attending, I have an ARRL donors event to go to. I also have, I'm going to the Flex Radio banquet. So if you're a Flex Radio fan, I can meet you there too. I don't think we have a table sign. I'm going to be at contest dinner on the Saturday night. So, catch me there. It's going to be nice. If you are going to Hamvention, let me know. I might have some stuff. And you can probably hang out, take some pictures and stuff like that. You might appear even on the YouTube channel. Right. And of course, the Voice of America's Bethany Relay Station, there's a story here about the VOA relay station in Cincinnati, Ohio. And, there's an article here in Columbus Live where they describe the old Bethany relay station VOA. So it's pretty interesting. You can check it out, columbusalive.com. All right. Well, that's the news. And next we're going to be taking some Q&A. And we'll talk about various things in ham radio. All coming up in Rhea Shack Ham Radio. So we're here for the Q&A segment, okay? And let's talk about questions and answers. So I'm going to go to Ham Radio / New to the Hobby on Facebook, and I'm going to take a few of their questions and answer them. So the first one is from William KK7DPA. He says, I'm a total greenhorn to amateur radio. I haven't even had my first QSO yet. QSO means contact. But I'm preparing the design of my ham shack, and I'm a bit of a quandary. I live in the Idaho Panhandle Mountains and have a ridge on both sides of me. I'm tucked into the bottom of a narrow valley with lots of tall trees around. My HT, handheld radio, hits a repeater nearby, so I know it's possible to get out. What are the antenna recommendations for my environment? Do I need a 100-foot tower of some kind? Thanks in advance to all you Elmers for any beginning nudges you can give to my greenhorn brain. Well, greenhorn, we were all green at one time, you know. Some of us stay green. But generally in a valley, your options get kind of limited. If you have repeaters on the nearby mountains or nearby hills, you should still be able to get out. And the fact that you can make contact with your handheld radio is proof positive of that. If your goal is to make VHF contacts, all is not lost, actually. What happens is that distance signals can basically diffract, meaning that they will get split by the mountains and then bent down into the valley. So you will still get scattered signals from afar, and then you can aim your antenna up and then transmit, and then it'll get scattered that way. It's not ideal, but it still allows you to communicate. The other thing is that if you're on HF, HF is a lot more forgiving to that kind of environment, right? HF will allow you to get out. You're still not going to be as optimal, but you're still going to be able to get out. I have a friend who is on DXCC honor roll, and he lives behind a big hill. So he's DXCC honor roll. He's a very high level DXer, meaning he's contacted a lot of countries and such like that. Antenna recommendations, I would really recommend that you get high gain antennas for VHF and you aim them, squarely up at the mountains. But that might not even be necessary if you're on HF. HF, pretty much anything will work. You can also do satellite communications. If you have satellites passing overhead, you can still make contacts via satellites, and that's a very cool and fun thing. You can also do like what I did when I was antenna restricted. You can go into your car and then drive away to somewhere that's favorable. Okay, so that's interesting. Right. So the next question is from Angel Carrion Cruz. Is it acceptable to use EMT electrical tubing to build a dipole / Yagi antenna? Is aluminum the only metal with radio propagation properties? Thanks in advance for your replies. Well, Angel, the problem is that electrical metal tubing. So, if you've done electrical work, I've done some. You can use electrical tubing to build a dipole or a Yagi antenna. There's going to be several problems with that. One of them is that it's going to be very heavy, okay? Because it's not as heavy, it's not as light as aluminum. Aluminum is commonly used in antennas because it is light, right? And, that's just physics. The other problem is that if it's exposed to the elements, it will corrode, it will rust, and it will be not good in no time. So it's probably not a good idea to use electrical tubing if you can avoid it. And then, that's what it is. There was an article I saw years ago, I believe it might have been 73 or CQ magazine, where they were making Yagi antennas out of copper. That seemed to be a little heavy, but they said it was possible. The difference with copper is that copper doesn't really corrode it corrodes, but it doesn't corrode like steel, or tubing does. Copper gets a little green, copper is used in electrical, in plumbing anyway, so it's not really going to be detrimental corrosion. So, it's the other thing, of course, is that trying to solder or weld electrical tubing, the fumes can be a little, it could be a little toxic. So, it's really interesting. I wouldn't recommend it at all. Chad DeRay Rumstad asks, how would I run a dipole for a mobile application? Is it not possible? Looking at doing this on my semi, it's a 2017 Freightliner Cascadia. So on a truck, if you have the space of a trailer, you could probably run a dipole. I don't know how it's going to work out space-wise. A dipole for HF is going to be pretty big. If you look at a dipole for 20 meters, that's going to be 33 feet? Even 10 meters is going to be kind of long. You could probably get away with it. A vertical antenna just gives you more bang for your buck. You can have that and it just goes straight up. It's not going to hit anything when you turn. As long as you keep it below the recommended height. Of course, trucks are always conscious of height anyway. I'll tell you that story sometime. But you definitely want something that's going to be compact. And, of course, the height on the highways is 13'6", right? 13'6". So I really wouldn't recommend it, And then plus the other thing is, you have the wind blowing it around and such. So it's really not, good. So, yeah, that's what I say. Definitely, I used to run HF on a car. I ran a vertical antenna with a coil. So, all right, let's see here. Tom Pamitat says, I've tried HF bands 20 meters, 40 meters yesterday, both in the morning and afternoon, hear nothing. With the solar cycle moving up, shouldn't the bands be better at this point? He's using a Chameleon Hybrid Mini 160 to 6 meter, 63-foot wire at about 25 feet. Today's reception was nearly nothing except for a few on 40 meters early this morning. Right, so there are a few ways to check that your antenna is working. I give a presentation about software-defined radios, and one of the things I like to tell people is that there are several ways these days with all of the software-defined radios across the world monitoring the HF bands. You can reliably see if you're getting out. So one of the sites I would definitely look at is pskreporter.info. If you're on FT8, right, you can definitely transmit some FT8, some CQs, and then see if you are getting out. You go on pskreporter.info, punch in your call sign, and you will see where you are. If you're doing Morse code, okay, you can then send out a few CQs in Morse code, and then go to reversebeacon.net, type in your call sign, search for it, and see if you're getting out. The other thing you need to do if you want to hear stuff, is old school. We have some government-sponsored propagation beacons. You know what they are? They're WWV and WWVH. So what you do is you go on, they have different frequencies. They're on 2.5, 5, 10, 15, and 20 megahertz, and I think they're all higher, up to 25 megahertz. So tune your radio to those frequencies and see if you're hearing anything. If you're hearing them, you will know reliably which band is open, which one you're hearing. I like to check WWV on 10 megahertz because that's a beacon. When I operate the lower bands, when I want to check the higher bands, I check WWV on 15 megahertz. That'll tell me somewhat if 20 meters and 40 meters are open. So yeah, so it's a very interesting thing. If you're outside the United States, there are other stations that tell you that, and WWV, by the way, will tell you the time as well too. There's also CHU in Canada. There's a station in Britain. There's even one in Venezuela, and there are a few of them. I believe there's one in Japan and Germany and such like that too. Like I said, if you want to send your questions, send them to RIA, R-I-A, at n2rj.com, and I'll answer them. We'll take a break, and I'll be right back. All right, and here is where we get into the segment where we're going to be talking about a topic for today. So today we're going to talk about Mars, and I'm going to bring on the interview with Ron Tomoe, and I hope you learned something. It's going to be real interesting. Okay, here we go. So tell me if I got the acronym right. It's Military Affiliate Radio Service or
Military Auxiliary.
Auxiliary,
Radio
okay.
System. They changed it. It used to be affiliate. Now it's a Military Auxiliary Radio System.
Got it. And what is it exactly? What,
Well, basically, we perform under a mission cited by the DoD to support the DoD in areas that have to do with mostly dealing with preparedness for disasters of any kind.
Right.
And we only get called out under a DoD order through, and I'm in Army Mars.
Okay.
There's an Army and there's an Air Force that one could join. I am in Region 2, Army Mars. And, each region also has a flexibility in how they do what they do. So I'll be speaking to what we do, and Region 2 is covering New York and New Jersey.
Okay. So it sounds like the regions are aligned with U.S. call districts. Am I correct?
They align with FEMA, actually.
Oh, okay. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. And you mentioned Air Force and Army. Navy and I guess Marine Corps is probably going to be on their Navy, but I don't think there's a Navy Mars anymore.
There was a Navy Mars, and they left the group for whatever various reasons. But there used to be Navy, Marines were together, and then Army and Air Force were there. And Army and Air Force still remain.
Right. So in my talks, I tell people that how historically Mars used to basically do phone patches for the troops at one time, basically allowing the troops to call home. But my brother was deployed in Afghanistan, and we basically use the internet now to keep in touch. So I guess that's no longer really a core function of Mars. So you mentioned disaster public service. So what is it exactly do you guys do?
Well, a lot of what we're here for is we train for being called out by the DoD for a specific mission. And a lot of it has to do with basically relaying information, transferring information, reaching out to the amateur community to get information or to give information. We spend a lot of time in training. The Region 2 has a really good training program. And we spend a lot of time doing this. And our mission basically is to prepare for whatever situation might come up. And I know what I do with the training in Region 2 is to try to make sure that you keep throwing different missions at people so that they have the ability to think on their feet, to be able to read through orders and then figure out what has to happen with that and move forward and just comply with whatever the requests are from headquarters.
Okay, so you mentioned you're in New York and New Jersey, right?
Yes.
Do you go anywhere else? Have you been deployed or anything with Mars?
I was actually requested during the Haiti earthquake.
Oh.
I was working in a hospital. My background is also hospital computer systems, which I did for like 40 years. And my job there also entailed, doing work and trying to help out people in the hospital who had family members in Haiti. So I ended up in a joint mission, which was part of the hospital, part of a group that was going to Haiti. And the Mars people asked me to also set up a WinLink end node at Ground Zero in Haiti. And so I went down to Haiti, and we were tasked with putting together a tent hospital. And I set up a lot of communications. I brought approximately $10,000 worth of equipment down there.
Wow.
All kinds of mostly VHF, but for Mars they wanted a WinLink station. So I also brought down an ICOM 718 with an SCS modem and set up a WinLink station that was passing information back to the Army. And also I was in contact with the gentleman that was also doing the PR work for the Army. And actually he did actually publish a book on 90 years of Mars. And actually the mission that I was on is actually in his book also. And he talks about the thing, because I spoke to him many times, through various mechanisms when I was in Haiti. Almost daily, I was trying to communicate with him. And then he wrote all this stuff, and he was giving a lot of the briefings to headquarters of what I was reporting back. But it was very interesting.
Wow, that's good stuff. So you guys could do. You've been to Haiti, which is near and dear to me because I'm from the Caribbean, and thank you for that. That's really really nice. So you mentioned WinLink and stuff, but let's step back a little further. So you're not amateur radio, right? You're a separate radio service.
Yes.
I don't hear you guys in the ham band, so obviously you use frequencies outside the ham bands, right?
Yes.
But first of all, since you're not amateur radio, you probably don't use your ham radio call sign, so you use a different call sign. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah, we're assigned a separate call. When you join Mars, you get what's equivalent to a training call sign.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to go through a training program, and headquarters has a specific list of things they want accomplished. And we make sure in Region 2, we assign a mentor to the person. We also run training nets 3 times a week. We also do webinars. I'm actually doing one coming up this Tuesday. We do the webinars constantly to keep people informed and to train them. We use special software with encryption capabilities and all that built in. We have our own digital communications that nobody else has.
Right.
And we tend to keep somewhat anonymous. They don't typically like when we'll merge a ham call with a Mars call sign. So it's interesting. And we also interface doing things. Like I'm involved in a really, very good program that I set up with the state of Maine, which is not even in Region 2, but the state of Maine was willing to do this through Radio Relay International. They had a situation where the state of Maine has a whole set of EOCs available, and also ARES, RACES, all the standard emergency groups are there. So what we started doing was to train both the Mars operators and help train the people in the EOCs. We started a program where once a week, I send out the equivalent of an ICS 213 message through the Mars side, talking to the Mars operators in Region 2. They, in turn, have to take the information that's there, and they have to go on to WinLink under their ham call sign and do a radiogram to the people in Maine. And then the people in Maine have to answer what we ask for. So we'll typically ask things like, where is the closest international airport, and what is its distance and bearing from your location? Where's the closest hospital to you? All right. Various things like that. Where's the closest seaport? And we usually ask for the bearing and distance. So we're trying to get them to think in the types of questions one might ask. And we also are trying to interface with the amateur community and get them to, work with us so we can continually, do this kind of work. It's actually very good. And as a matter of fact, something just came out recently. Just now, I just saw it, where one of the publications out of Maine just wrote a whole, story about what we're doing there. So, and it's been very popular for both the Mars operators and for the people on the other side, because they're actually doing, some real stuff, and we're asking them real questions, and we're asking them a little more difficult questions. You mentioned METARs, and for those who don't know what a METAR is, I briefly covered that in my video about drones. So basically, a METAR is the aviation weather report, and it's coded kind of like, you see like a bunch of random numbers and letters, but they tell you like the wind speed and knots and cloud cover, etc. We actually do a lot of, we even do training. I've had to do training on explaining that to the Mars members and showing them what each item means. I actually have a whole we put together, because one of the guys in my region is also a pilot. So him and I got together and we put together an entire, class curriculum for this, including having them listen to a METAR, because a lot of times we're not allowed, like many times in our exercises, we're not allowed to use the internet. We're not allowed to use a cell phone. We're not allowed to use it. We use HF sometimes. That's predominantly where we work, in that arena. And so a lot of times when we get, orders for COMEX, which is a communications exercise, when we get orders like that, many times they will actually say unquestionably, you can't use any of the things that people use nowadays, because we are more interested in keeping everything running. And I know for a fact that even in New York on 9/11, where basically cell phones were practically useless.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, yeah, we all do around here, and it was
Yeah.
problematic, and the ham operators played a big role. And we are concerned with HF side. We move traffic, not only within the region, we move it across the country or across the world if necessary.
So, right. So you mentioned HF. So obviously, from what I gather, your frequencies are secret and such like that, right?
Yeah.
Do you have to use special equipment, or do you just use ham? I know like a lot of ham equipment, and some of these guys come on my channel and they operate. Well, I Mars modded my radio to operate on CB, but really, the Mars modification is really for Mars. Like Flex Radio, for example, will only modify a radio if you present a valid license, and then they will do it, which is how it should be anyway. So you guys use regular amateur equipment, is that correct?
Most of a large majority will do that. Some people will buy, and a lot of the military equipment is very expensive, extremely expensive. But 99% of the people are probably just using, they are using regular ham radios, and there is a Mars modification pretty much for all of them. Yes, you're supposed to present a DOD, license. We get, our own license with our call signs. Kind of like you're supposed to present a ham call when you're buying a ham radio. Well, if you want, I know they don't do it, but you're supposed to. It's like, well, it's the same idea. If you ask for a Mars modification, I've had to, fax or email my Mars license to them before they will do it. And so they'll make the change. I've made these mods myself many times because I've been doing this a long time. I've been a ham for 54 years, and I've been in Mars for 21 years or so. So I've made many modifications to this stuff. But nowadays the radios become more and more complicated, and the parts are getting smaller and smaller. You can barely see what you have to do.
And some of them software.
Yeah. And then you also got, you've got to deal with a lot of stuff. And then, of course, the warranties are voided, obviously, once you touch this stuff. So I now I tend to when I'm buying something new, I just tend to let the manufacturer deal with it, let them change it.
So we covered frequencies. What about modes? You guys, you say you use WinLink, right? That's one of the things, but you said you use other HF modes. So what other HF modes do you use?
The main thing that we use, and again, just to be clear, we use WinLink only when we're operating on the ham side. WinLink's not authorized on the Mars frequency. It's on the ham. We often have to change hats in the middle of something, because when we get a particular order to reach out to a community, an amateur community, well, a lot of times the only way we could do that is either get on a repeater or something. We're not authorized to use our Mars call signs. We are authorized when they tell us we're authorized. We do get on 60 meters sometimes with our Mars call signs, and that's usually under direct orders from headquarters to do that. And the mode we use when it comes to it, we use something which is called 110 Alpha, which is a military, type of system, and that's how we handle this stuff. We don't give out, information about the software. We have our own software. It's not something you could buy. It comes with when you become a member.
Okay. Right. I would imagine there's a lot of stuff that's not for public consumption, because of the mission and all that stuff. So that's good. But it's good to hear that using, I guess, single sideband and stuff for your nets, and
Yeah, it's basically we're using most of the stuff is always on upper sideband, which is
Okay.
not, which is very typical of digital, stuff. It's usually running on upper sideband.
Okay.
But and so does our stuff. But after that, everything's different. It's all encrypted. It's very
Yeah.
different. As a matter of fact, our stuff we couldn't even use. We can't use encrypted stuff on the ham bands.
Right.
That's not even allowed.
As I would expect, and if you're dealing with something sensitive for military use, it should be encrypted. Let's talk about how, so what are the requirements? You need a ham license, and what I gather, you have to be either a citizen or a permanent resident of the United States. Any other requirements?
Yeah, I believe it's just the other requirement. You have to have a ham license, and if you have a technician license, I believe the last time I looked it up, because most of the people that come in already have a general license or an extra license. But if you come in with a technician license, you're supposed to upgrade to a general license, usually within a year. They give you enough time for that. And you typically have to pass all your training within 6 months. And obviously there are exceptions for various things, because we do have some people that are in Mars that also are reserve and get called out to active duty.
Okay.
And they get put on hold while they're away. But and then I believe the other one is 17 years old. I think it was 17 or 18. We tend to get people older than that. We don't get a lot of people joining in their early 20s or teens.
Yeah.
That's just not.
It sounds like a big time commitment, so it's probably better suited towards somebody who's like retired or something like that.
Yeah, because it's actually, if you're doing everything, it could be a lot of work. I mean, I spend hours every day. I mean, it's a lot of work if you're doing it right.
Right. Okay.
Like anything.
Yeah. And of course, I would imagine you need to not have any FCC violations and, be a good moral character and stuff like that. So,
yeah, they were, as a matter of fact, recently what they started was, it used to be that when you joined Mars, you were licensed for 10 years, matching your ham license. Right. So when your ham license expired, your Mars license expired. They recently changed that. Now what they do is every year you get a 1 year, 1 year license, ability to, use their frequencies with your call sign, and they'll renew it only if you're in good standing, which means if you put in the right hours, you've handled certain things, you joined a COMEX. We do 4 major COMEXs a year. And you have to be part of at least, one of those. And you can be, you either can be renewed with no requirements that you have to meet other than the normal ones, and you're renewed for the whole year. Or you can be renewed for only 3 months on like a probation period with certain things that have to be done within that time period. Or you're not renewed. So if you don't meet certain requirements, then you're not renewed.
So let me ask you something. You mentioned that you often cross into ham radio. Do you do are you guys part of this Armed Forces Radio Day or?
Oh yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. There are a lot of times we will actually run stations from the crossover days. A lot of times we will try to promote it and get people more involved. And also a lot of times we as ham operators will talk to some of these places also, because you get a lot of the military bases on the crossover, and you get to talk to all kinds of people around the country and different parts of the world. So
I've followed some of what you've been doing, and I noticed that you got some presidential recognition from President Trump a couple of years ago. And could you tell me, what is the biggest reward I mean, obviously, a lot of people, most people, I would imagine, do this for the mission, right? Because they believe in giving back. But, even if you're doing something, I mean, people like to be recognized and such like that. So what is the biggest reward for you as a Mars operator?
Well, I mean, to me, I spend a lot of time, helping and training others for this mission, an inordinate amount of time. All right. And to me, the more people are prepared to deal with stuff and know what to do, because we train people in so many things that in the event of even a local problem, you know what to do. You know all the people, you know everything, whether you're acting as part of the Mars program or you're acting as a ham operator. But the main thing is that you have all these connections, you know what to do, you know how to report stuff, you know how to create messages, you know how to, handle all these things. The presidential award, the thing that I got from President Trump was the President Volunteer Service Award, a Gold Presidential Volunteer Service Award, which was for it was over 2,000 or 2,500 hours of service in that particular year, and then I also got stuff for the Haiti mission,
Right.
And actually the ARRL recognized that mission because in 2010 they had given me the ARRL International Humanitarian of the Year Award.
Yes.
In 2010. So, but yeah, you get stuff. We also get when you perform certain functions, all right, and do certain things. Sometimes Chief Army Mars will send a challenge coin with a note to you, stuff like that.
Oh, that's nice.
You get different things, but people are in it for a lot of reasons. It really depends on the people. There are a lot of obviously former military people, and they just kind of want to keep their hand in. I know one gentleman in particular who joined, and he joined because he was in Vietnam, and he was a soldier. He was like 18 years old, and he happened to walk into. He saw a booth that said Mars. He didn't even know what it was. He just walked in. Right, he had no idea what it was. He walked in, and he was able to talk to his family. And he said if he ever got out of Vietnam, all right, he was going to join Mars, and he did.
Wow.
And he's been in for a long, long time.
When people see a booth that says Mars, either you'll see Elon Musk near to it,
right,
or they'll see a big tall guy with a cookbook.
Right, to serve man.
I'm telling you, that's great. That's great. One question. Are there any women in Mars? Just curious. Like, I know they're probably not a lot due to ham radio. They're not being.
Yeah, we actually have one woman in Region 2. Like you said, there's not a lot. It's but we do have we have one in Region 2, and I know over the years we've had others that just either retired or sadly passed away. But throughout my 21 years or so, maybe there were 5 or 6 that I knew that were in Mars over that time. But no, it's predominantly men.
I would imagine because, the military used to, I mean, only now they're opening up combat roles to women and such like that. So, there really weren't that many women in the military. And I guess since it's military centered, that's probably why. But, times are changing. So finally, if somebody wants to get in, before I do that, actually, there was one question. I actually spoke to Lieutenant Wayne Fox of the Civil Air Patrol. Do you guys work with them at all?
Actually, we have members that are also in the Civil Air Patrol.
Okay.
We will work with anybody who works with us. It's like basically because part of our job and part of a big push in what we do has to do with civil affairs. Right. And I know I've been working closely with our civil affairs officer, recently newly appointed civil affairs officer. And, we're spending a lot of time developing that and trying to get groups involved. It's like what we're trying to do is set up, be it Aries, races, clubs. I know I've set up things with clubs and they've helped out during COMEXs and with various groups. But the best thing, and we're trying to reach out actually to in Region 2, we have a rather aggressive program we're trying to put in to try to get more people involved in the civil affairs side, because we want the hams to be involved. And also, since we don't typically deploy anywhere, all right, we're getting information and we have to get that sometimes from people on the ground, which are the best people to get it from. So we're very interested in having these relationships set up in advance. All right. Like, for example, now I know because of all the work I've done with the people in Maine and with, RRI, I know that in any event that happens, I could contact them and they will help us. All right. Because they know who we are. They know what we do. And we're trying to establish those relationships with more clubs, more Aries groups, races groups. But it's sometimes it's hard. I got to tell you, it's not an easy task to get them to get people to do stuff. It's like we want to do real exercises.
Yeah, it's hard to recruit people to do things in ham radio too, especially.
Yes.
Well, it in general, I find that, I don't know, things are kind of changing where people's desire and where they want to volunteer is changing.
Right.
All right. So if somebody, you mentioned the person in Vietnam who walked into a Mars booth, and if somebody wants to get involved, and first of all, they got to see if it's right for them. What would be their first step?
Well, the first thing, actually, there's a website that you could Google. It's available, and there's an application that's online, which you can just bring down and submit. It will end up in the appropriate. It will actually get in Region 2. Will go to a region director. All right, and the region director then will vet the person. There'll be a vetting process. There's certain things that sometimes make it very difficult for people to do, is we try to vet them and explain to them, because we're trying to get a very good fit with everything. And, like, for example, part of the reason why some of the younger people and middle-aged people, they don't join, or they'll join and then they have to drop out and rejoin at a later time, is because of the commitment requires time. And I know we've had people that had 4 or 5 kids, and they're trying, you can't, because we have nets that meet at 7:00 at night, and on weekends, we're constantly doing stuff, so it makes it difficult. So we try to vet all that and make sure that they have the commitment. I know a region director will spend an hour and a half on the phone with people when they say they want to join. They could just contact, other people just contact him or me, and I'll direct them to the director. But if anyone's interested, they can always contact me, and I could certainly help them to, navigate the course on how to do all this and get them to the people, because ultimately anyone in our region is going to come to, anyone in New York and New Jersey is coming into Region 2, because it's geographically, handled. So they can, have my information, and they can contact me.
Well, that's good. This was certainly an interesting discussion, and it's part of my larger discussion of how HF is making a comeback for a lot of things.
Yes.
HF, Flex Radio has a project with the General Atomics MQ series unmanned aircraft, otherwise known as the drones, not the little DJI drones, but I'm talking about the drones you see in the sky, and you're wondering what's next, right?
Yeah. Well,
But
one of them helped me put up my dipoles. So
well, they
yeah, it's
have,
great.
yeah, they're actually controlling those via HF.
Mhm.
Now, there's a lot of investment in HF by military and even some commercial interest now, because they see this as a robust alternative to satellites, which are
Yes.
vulnerable. So,
Yes.
what you guys doing? I mean, you know, I don't know if in the future if you guys might have to resume some of the phone patches, but you know what? The service mission is definitely appealing to a lot of people in terms of disasters and such like that.